Just to let you know, so the caption at the bottom hasn't changed. So it's Mentorship Mondays with Sibu Sibata.
Yeah, all good. We're live now. So hello guys, and welcome to Mentorship Monday. If you've just joined us, hello to Avetandra and Siliwinski. Zaza, hello to you. Inga, hello. Sure, we've got quite a number of people on already. Tepo and Miss Lehana, hello to you, and Issa. And of course, I want to do a big hello to everybody who's joining us on LinkedIn as well. Mkhize, hey, we see you. And Buhle, lots of love back to you as well. Thank you so much, guys, for making the time to join us today. I'm really excited that Ntsiki is with us today. I'm going to introduce you shortly, but I just want to she's with us on LinkedIn. So Ntsiki, I'm going to ask you just for us to get you on Instagram as well. So you would just need to request to join, and then I'll be able to join you on Instagram. Guys, we're making progress. We're like on multiple platforms all at the same time. And our eyes, so that you know, we are visible everywhere.
Okay, so let me get Okay, awesome. I need to try and figure out my audio. Hold on.
Yeah, we have a bit of a delay.
I am hearing you via StreamYard and on my phone as well. So I'm trying to figure out how to manage the audio on both sides.
Yeah, I think what we're going to have to do is we're actually going to have to go off StreamYard because of the echo. And we're going to have to keep it on
Instagram. Look,
on
what we can do, hi everybody, look at us figuring out tech while we're chatting. So what we can do is I can actually mute my laptop and mute you on StreamYard. And then when I respond to you, I just have to remember to unmute myself on StreamYard so that your LinkedIn audience gets both audios. But we'll test it out and see how it goes.
Okay, let's try that. I love that. So let's absolutely try that. So while Ntsiki is doing that, let me do a quick intro. So I want to just firstly say I'm so excited that Ntsiki could join us today. She's absolutely phenomenal. We're talking to an author. Her inaugural book is called My Hall of Mentors. So when we talk about building a community of mentors, it's the Ntsikis of this world that we're really looking for. And she's a TED Talk alum, if I can call it that. And she was also featured as the youngest speaker at the International Speakers Summit, an Epic Entrepreneurs Virtual Conference where she participated in 2020. The thing that excites me most about Ntsiki, of course, is that she's the founder of Mentor. And this is a global mentorship network that supports female entrepreneurs. We're going to want to find out a bit more about that, Ntsiki, and the kind of coaching obstacles that you're coaching people through and mentoring some of the social entrepreneurs through. She has her master's in social innovation, which she got at Glasgow Caledonian University, and her dissertation was all about exploring the social entrepreneurship ecosystem in Johannesburg. So yes, she was in Glasgow, but she didn't forget back home and making sure that she was solving a problem that was relevant to our local context. The reason why I wanted to invite Ntsiki is that I have come across the Ikigai concept on a number of occasions. And, you know, it took me a while to go, what is this exactly? What is this tool? How do I use it? And is this the kind of tool that helps me to break through into new ways of thinking, new ways of being, new ways of achieving my goals? And I thought, why not bring an expert who actually, you know, really understands Ikigai, who uses it in her own mentoring and coaching practice to help us think through all of this. So Ntsiki, thank you. Thank you for being here. Let me give you an opportunity to get a word in and say hello to everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much. My StreamYard is a bit slow. I think you might have to mute your laptop so that my audio is not coming back through.
I have.
Awesome. So
I have.
hi everybody, so lovely to be here. It's always wonderful to watch the work that you're doing, and I'm so glad to have the invitation to come and speak to your audience. One, because mentorship is such a huge thing for me. I think it's so important, and for me, I believe everybody should have a mentor, and a big part of how we grow, how we become successful in life is having mentors. So when I wrote my book, My Hall of Mentors, the subtitle to that was Lessons Learned Along the Journey of Success, right? Because I truly do believe that success is a journey. You don't wake up one day successful. It's the little steps in between that you take that allow you to get to a place of success. And in that, mentorship is a big part of the assistance that you get. And then when you mentioned about Ikigai and purpose, I really do believe in living a purposeful life, that you step into the world from a place of purpose and you're intentional about that. And so I'm really excited to be chatting to you about Ikigai, because I think it's such a helpful thing for people to figure out for themselves and then pin it down for how they show up in the world.
I think that's awesome. Thank you for accepting the invitation. We're really, really excited to have you, Ntsiki. And I saw there's a couple of things already. I'm seeing some of the comments around. Tell us more about the book. We want to know about the lessons learned. Guys, we have an hour. We will get to the lessons. We're going to get to the book and all of those amazing things. But I think right now, let's just go to the origins of Ikigai. And the reason why I want to go to the origins, Ntsiki, is that I get the question a lot. How do I find my purpose? How do I discover my purpose? How do I know that I'm doing the thing that I'm destined to do? How does Ikigai help us to answer that question?
Yeah, so Ikigai comes from Japanese practice, right? It's a Japanese word, and it's all about finding your flow, right? And if people go to my page, I'm in the middle of doing a series called the As I Am 21-Day Goal Challenge, which is all around goal setting. And so every year when I sit down and set my goals, and when I do this with clients, we always sit and talk through Ikigai, which is, for another word, saying, how do you find your sweet spot, right? So it's sitting down and asking yourself 4 key questions. And the first question you ask yourself is, what am I good at, right? And the objective is Ikigai is to say that somewhere in the middle, there's something that comes to life for you, and that's where you can start looking for your purpose. So what am I good at is things that you just know how to do naturally, things where you've volunteered in the space, you've studied this, you're vocationally good at this, you're qualified at this. It's natural talents and gifts, right? Which is such an important thing, because when we're good at something, we tend to overlook it, because you go, oh, that happens easy. I don't really have to work. But you have to pay attention. What do people often say to you? Oh my goodness, Nozi, you're so brilliant when it comes to this. Or like, anytime you do this, it works out really well. Those are gifts, they're talents. So make a list of all of those things, no matter how insignificant or inconsequential they might seem, right? Then the second question is asking yourself, what do I absolutely love? What am I passionate about? What are the things that set your heart on fire? And that's important, because as people, we're not passionate about the same thing, right? So I believe in women empowerment. I believe in supporting and equipping women. I believe in mentorship. And those are things I will go to war over and, create businesses around. There's other things in the world that I think are equally important, but I wouldn't necessarily dedicate my time towards resolving those things. And that's the same for you, so the things that you are passionate about, the things that you love, that's an indicator for you. It's kind of, we call it a pulse point to say, let's dig a little further and see what else lies beneath this. And then the third question to ask yourself is, what does the world need? So what are the things that you often look at in the world and go, why hasn't anybody done this yet? And that's also a pulse point, because we see the world differently. So I will always notice places where I go, here's a touch point to create employment. Here's a touch point to create work opportunities. Here's a touch point to create access to economies, right? Because my brain is focused on those things. Those are the things that I care about. So you could also notice something that nobody else has paid attention to and find that this is an opportunity for business or whatever, right? And then the fourth question you ask yourself is, what are people willing to pay for? And this could be people as individuals, so me as an end user. It could be people as customers who are willing to pay for something on the behalf of beneficiaries. It could be foundations, corporates, governments, whatever it is, right? But somebody who's willing to pay for the value that you are exchanging. And somewhere in the middle is what we call your Ikigai. That is where you have something that you know how to do, that you enjoy doing, that meets a need in the world, and that someone is willing to pay you for. And if you dive deeper into Ikigai, it then gives you combinations of, your vocation simply being something that you know how to do and you're good at doing. I mean, that you're good at doing and that you are passionate about doing. And then your mission is where you're meeting a need in the world and you're also passionate about the thing that you're doing. In a job, and this is the space where most people find themselves, is they good at something and they get paid to do it, but they don't really have the heart aspect of it. And really what you want to find is that thing that combines all four, where you're good at it, you are passionate about it, the world needs it, and someone is willing to pay you for it. And that's an exercise I like to do when I work with entrepreneurs, because a big focus for me and the work that we do at Mentor is supporting female social entrepreneurs. And if you are a woman who's passionate about solving a social issue, or if you've been running a nonprofit and you're just not sustainable in your business, it's going, okay, how do we shift that? And how do we turn the pain point that you see in the world into something that you can generate revenue from and that you can apply your skills to earn an income from it, but also to add value to people through that particular thing.
I'm going to get to the question, Ntsiki, about what do you do when all four haven't quite overlapped for you? Because that's generally the place at which people would, come forward, asking for mentorship or asking for coaching, because they're like, well, actually, I'm good at it, I'm passionate about it, and I really think the world needs it, but nobody seems to actually want to pay for this thing, right? So we're going to talk about that, but before I get there, I just want to validate something that you said that I think is so important, and that is there's a difference between your profession, your vocation, and your mission. Maybe just flesh those three things out, because we often think we're in pursuit of one thing. We're supposed to find this one thing. And I'm hearing that actually there's three different things that can come out of going through the process.
100%. So the sweet spot, the magical spot, is when you're able to have all of those in one place. So if you can wake up every single day, and this is when you find, multi-millionaires and, people who are really fulfilled in life saying, I get paid to do what I love, right? And sometimes you hear rich people going, chase the dream and the money will follow. Like, it's these grand statements that you go, that's great, but how do I even get there, right? So the goal, the ideal is to say, can I create a job for myself, a business for myself that revolves around these things? But what we often miss is that sometimes we just do live in a space where skills are required for a specific job and someone's going to pay us for it, and that's that. And that's the majority of the world. A lot of people aren't awake to what their passions are. And we see this a lot in corporates where people are working, but the morale is low, or people are in a space, but they don't feel fulfilled. So I'm just doing the job because it's a job, but there's really nothing else for me. And what's interesting is the Gen Zs are actually coming through and they're like, no, I don't like the vibe here. I'm not going to stay, right? And they started a little bit with millennials, and millennials were like, but I want purpose in the work that I do. I want to work with a company or for a company that's doing something good in the world, that's making a difference. So we're seeing a bit of a change where the world is shifting from just working for work's sake to working for, we have passion, we have purpose, and we're pursuing something that is higher than ourselves, but something that is common to the human goal, right? So your profession, your vocation is a skill set that you have that you simply exchange in the marketplace. But when you shift to a space of mission, you go, I'm now matching my skill set and the exchange of value with something that's mission driven, right? So you'll see this in an accountant, for example, who goes, I really know how to manage books. Like, I'm brilliant at that, but I'm going to manage books for this charity organization that does this work that I think is absolutely beautiful, right? So I might still be doing the same accounting work, right? And I think oftentimes people think that they have to completely change their vocation, and that's not true. It could just be finding a new context within which to apply your skill set, and I see this a lot with, for example, impact investors, who they go, yes, I know how to be an investor. I've done this for years. I've been in the investment space for a while, but I want to start investing in businesses that actually have an impact in the world and an impact on society. So, it is really a journey. I think there's very few people who from the beginning are able to kind of start in that sweet spot. Oftentimes, because, family emergencies are a real thing. The need to survive is a real thing. Oftentimes, our families don't give us that option, right? So you might be very passionate about music and your parents say, there's no such thing as a musician in this house. Go learn how to do something else, So our journey to being able to create sustenance out of the things that we're passionate about might take longer, right? Especially when it's something that the world doesn't immediately reward. And for me, it's just very important that we wake people up to that and we get people to be conscious about it and to go, okay, I'm stuck in the space of vocation and just working for money, but I'm deliberate about creating a space where my life can exist in a space of mission, right? And that might mean that I have my job, but I volunteer somewhere and this brings me fulfillment. So I have that balance. And something else that we can unpack is what I call the portfolio life, which I absolutely love, that we're used to people starting a job somewhere and working however many years, and that's that. And really what we're seeing now is that more and more people are creating portfolio lives where you work for this company during the day and you consult at this place half time, and then you do something else on the weekend and you do something else in the evenings. So we're no longer confined to just doing one thing, right? Which is, when I look at kind of, ancient philosophers and those kinds of people, I'm always amazed at how we got to this place where we just became one disciplined people, because you'll read about the ancient greats and they were mathematicians and they were physicians and they were authors and they were also like people who painted and sculpted, so there's freedom to do all of these things. And somehow, our society was like, no, you just have to do one thing and you have to figure out how to make that one thing work. So the introduction of a portfolio life for me is then also seeing more people have avenues for self-expression to make sure that there is that sense of fulfillment in our lives, because you're at work half your life, 50% of your day, 50% of your week, sometimes more than that is your life. And so we have to be deliberate about making sure that that is fulfilling and enjoyable.
Sure, guys, the discipline I'm having to have because of the sound and the muting and the audio and not being able to, I think I just kicked myself out of LinkedIn. Just a second. Oh, there I'm back. The discipline I'm having to have about not interrupting Ntsiki so we can keep the audio clean is something that I'm getting used to. You can see I'm like dying to jump in while she's speaking. But I'm learning in the flow as well, and that's beautiful. But I just wanted to pause on a couple of things, Ntsiki, and then we're going to go back to the question of how to get unstuck, because I think you've said some really, really powerful things. So the one is vocation, mission, profession, three different things. They don't always coincide, but ideally that would be great. When your profession is almost like the trade that you're able to use in your place of mission, which I absolutely love that. I loved your point about the portfolio life, because I think there certainly is a massive push where people are going, I actually don't want to be anywhere from 9 to 5, actually. I want to do different things that fulfill me, that speak to the things that I'm passionate about, the skills that I'm wanting to build. And the question mark then just becomes how? How do I do that in a commercially viable way, in a fulfilling way that doesn't also lead me to burnout? And then before I go to your question, I just want to shout out two people. So Nizananda, I just saw you online. We need you here. And I'm so glad, because it looks like Ntsiki knows you as well. I saw you last in Ghana with you a couple of years ago, but you've got so much wisdom. We're going to chase you. We're going to find you. We're going to invite you. And then I just saw somebody also called Tandega Landlord. We're going to reach out to you because, guys, I'm tired of people asking me about investing in property. I know nothing about it. So somebody else will come and talk to us about that. But Ntsiki, I want us to come back to getting unstuck, because for me, some of the questions that I'm constantly getting is, so Nozi, how do I get unstuck? I found something. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm passionate about. I know how to get a sense of what I think the world needs, right? But my challenge is nobody seems to want to pay for it. I have a lot of one-on-one coaching sessions where people say, this is what I want to do. Help me make money out of it. And that's just an example of feeling a bit stuck in your Ikigai and that things aren't coming together. What do you do when it's not seamlessly overlapping? How do you get unstuck?
That's such a good one, right? Because being stuck is different for different people, right? So it's a question of, is it flow, right? So are you feeling like I'm not in my flow? Is it a question of I'm not valued where I am? Is it a question of I don't feel like what I'm doing is adequately rewarding, right? So you need to firstly for yourself identify where is it that you're stuck and why, you know? So is it an internal thing where you've literally outgrown where you are and you're needing to shift into a new space? Or is it an external thing where the environment that you find yourself in is not allowing for that degree of expression? And then you need to ask yourself hard questions on, okay, what do I do about this, right? So if it's a thing where you're realizing that my current work environment and myself are not on the same page, then do you decide to stay or do you leave? Do you make a plan to stay? You know, do you find a company that can accommodate that, or do you start a business that can accommodate that, right? So being able to kind of logically work through that process, you know. So firstly, identify where it is that you're stuck and why you're stuck, right? Because sometimes it's not always a question of leaving. So you could be stuck in your organization because you've been relegated to a particular role and there's also expectations around you because you've never said anything aside from that, right? So that could be having a conversation and going to your manager and saying, hey, I'd really like to be exposed to more of this kind of work, or I'd like to work more with this project or this division. And then based on how that conversation goes, that maybe you go, okay, maybe I belong in a different division and not the department that I'm currently working in. And then going, okay, actually this organization as a whole is not a place where I need to be in, so I need to start looking somewhere else. And the truth is, if you look, those places do exist, right? The combination might not necessarily be what you expect or what you've anticipated, but those combinations do exist, right? And really, I often find the more unique something is, the more research it requires. And that's also why it's great to have mentors, because they are the people that can kind of help you go, oh, we know these people that are working on this and maybe you should plug in there. And the other side of being stuck, you know, is going, as an entrepreneur, is this something I need to interrogate, you know? So, and that's, for entrepreneurs, it's different because the power, so to speak, is more within your own control, that you can go, I initially created this business for this particular purpose, but it's actually not serving that anymore. Or I think we need to shift the focus of our business so that it's more aligned with the thing that I want to do, that is more within my flow of Ikigai. And then you can also do the same process for your own personal life. You know, so sometimes we can get stuck in relationships that just aren't serving us, whether that's romantic, friendship, family relationships, where that's always been the dynamic, right? So every December, or knows is the one who needs to figure out holiday plans. And it's like, no, guys, like, I don't want to do that, actually. I just did it that one time, but this is not my role, right? So where are you stuck in those relationships? And then you have to go, how am I showing up, right? And where is there misalignment in terms of who I am as a person, who I desire to be, and what the situation is requiring of me? And that requires hard conversation. So being able to say, hey, Nozi, I know every time we hang out, I'm the one who initiates dinner and who sets the date and finds the restaurant. And that makes me feel like you don't care about our friendship. So can you meet me halfway, right? It requires, and you know, those hard conversations might not be as clear cut, because sometimes we know we're stuck, but we don't know what we need to feel unstuck, or we don't know how the next person can support us in that process. But I often find if you're able to go into discussion and upfront it, you can then start having conversations around how you deconstruct and then move forward in a manner that is supportive, if that makes sense. So what I'll say to people is do that self-audit where you're stuck, why you're stuck, and is this an internal thing, you know, so that your dialogue, your thinking, your internal pressures, or is it an external thing in terms of other people's expectations or the environment that you find yourself in that isn't allowing you to shift, and then having those hard conversations and then figuring out the support that you need to help you to move forward.
Okay, I feel like a DJ. Just bear with me. But sure, so firstly, I just want to check in with the people on LinkedIn who are flagging that there was still a little bit of echo. Please let me know if it's better now. So I am now muting myself completely when Ntsiki is speaking, so that you don't have that echo. But I just want to pause on a couple of things, Ntsiki. I think that was just so powerful in terms of reminding us about the importance of the conversation itself in order to begin to get unstuck, and an honest audit and honest reflection. And one of the things I'm always going on about is, yeah, there might be stuff that's external to you, that's environmental. This is what's happening to me. But it's not that everything is happening to you. There's some stuff that we need to own internally and some stuff we need to change internally. And until we're ready to confront ourselves about such, we probably get stuck a little bit. But I also thought, you know, your comment about relationships is just so important, because I think we often think about Ikigai in the context of just profession, right? And we think about it as, you know, this is a corporate tool. This is something that makes me, you know, break through and make progress professionally. But, you know, that relationship that needs your attention and needs that audit, and for you to go, you know, classic Valentine's, guys. Many of you are going to be having Ikigai conversations, because you're tired of being the one who's always, you know, let's do this, let's do that. But I mean, you know, all the best on that one. But I think it's so amazing to hear the applicability of the tool in different places. So I have a couple of questions, Ntsiki.
Yeah.
One of them is from Abigail Simonos. Abigail was saying, what about happiness? Where does happiness fit in to the equation? How important is it? And I thought it was such a brilliant question, because maybe it's the money that makes you happy. So the thing that matters to you most is the world is willing to pay for it. Whether it brings you joy and passion and all of that is less important. But how do you factor in happiness, and how do you give it its place in Ikigai? And, you know, is it the correct assumption just to say that central sweet spot is happiness? I'm not sure. What are
Such a great question. Thanks so much, Sam, for that question. So we have to first define happiness, right? So you could go, I'm doing this thing and I want to be happy in everything. And I think the first misconception that we have, especially I think more so as a result of social media, is that we're supposed to be happy in everything. And that's not true. You know, happiness is an emotion that comes and goes, right? So you could be happy after a meeting. And this for me is what I define as the emotional roller coaster of entrepreneurs. That you have a meeting in the morning and you're happy, and then there's a business crisis, and then you're not feeling great about this, then something happens and then you're happy. So there's a whole roller coaster of emotions that fluctuate throughout the day based on what's happening around you, and very much so the same for people who have corporate jobs, right? Then there's what I define as joy. And joy is more a state of being, right? So I might be having a very difficult day, but I'm still joyful in the context of my difficult day. And this is for me where Ikigai comes to life, where I say to people, on difficult days, I'm still joyful because I'm having a difficult day doing something I'm passionate about, right? So if I was having a difficult day working, so I did my honors in logistics management. And I remember when I first graduated, I almost got a job at a depot. Ntsiki, can I tell you, if I was having a tough day working at a depot, I'd be sad, you know, like it would be terrible. So the fact that when I have difficult days, they are in the context of a business that I'm building and enjoying building and impacting people that that I care about, and I get to do work that I deeply care about. Even the terrible days are great days because they happen in a context of joy, because how privileged am I to be challenged in the space that I want to be, right? So I think people need to figure that out for themselves, to go, am I miserable because I'm just having a hard day, or am I simply just in a situation that actually doesn't serve me, and that's why I'm not in a great space? You know, so you might not always be happy, but you can be in a state of joy, fulfillment, and contentment in the space that you're in, right? And then the second layer of that is the work by Sean Aiko that I really like. And this is the definition around happiness. And Sean Aiko says that the challenge and his book is called The Happiness Advantage. If you want to watch a TED Talk, the TED Talk is by the same title as well. And he says the challenge with our generation and around happiness is the fact that we put happiness on the other side of accomplishment. So we say to ourselves, when I do this, then I'll be happy. So when I get the money, when I achieve the goal weight, when I have the relationship, when whatever, fill in the blank, then I'll be happy. And the problem with that is that human nature is, once you reach the goal, you shift the goalpost. So the moment I start making the extra 10,000 I was wanting to make, I then go, okay, now I need to start making an additional 20,000. So I don't give my brain the opportunity to actualize the achievement and to celebrate the achievement, right? And that leads to a state of what he calls cognitive dissonance, where we're constantly feeling like we're not accomplishing anything. And what he says that we need to shift happiness to before the thing is done, right? So you need to be happy showing up, right? And, you know, he's done all this wonderful research of, you know, how people perform and show up and how more effective and accurate they are when they're working from a place of happiness. And literally what he defines happiness as is your brain being in a state of positivity, right? So if we had to put you under an MRI, it'll be, your learning centers and your positive centers all fired up, right? And so he has, things that you can do that help you achieve that state of happiness. But the point is that you're not waiting for something material that is outside of yourself to influence that happiness, right? You are going into the world going, I'm happy even if that doesn't happen. I'm happy even if I don't have that. And when you work from that space, you're less shifted, right? So you have more stability in the sense that, yes, I'm really working on this project. I wanted to do this, but even if that result doesn't happen, my internal happiness and my internal stability won't be swayed by the external result. And that's the shift that a lot of people need to make, that we need to be able to show up in our power, in our truth, in our joy, in our contentment, and then engage in the world and say, whether or not I get this promotion, I'm still going to be okay. Whether or not this happens, I'm still going to be good. Doesn't mean we work any less towards it, doesn't mean we try any less, but it's more that deliberate sense to go that we can't be as fickle around material things, especially when we consider how easy it is to be really, really high and then really, really low, right? So we can start bringing in measures that allow us to temper that experience by moving from a place of happiness as such. So I hope that helps, Abigail, that there's a lot of, tools we can unpack around how you can be happy, so gratitude, journaling, exercise, eating well, getting good sleep, all of those things help in positive cognition. And then there's stuff around how do you track your goals that actually makes you feel like you're progressing. But overall, it's choosing. I see Nelshy says choose joy. Yes, it's choosing the joy, being in that position, and then engaging from that point of strength.
Okay, DJ Nosy back. Okay, so I just want to reflect on what you've just said. Oh my gosh, I think that is just so powerful on so many levels. I firstly just want to shout out a couple of people on LinkedIn. Anthony Maina, I know he's dialing in from Kenya, and he's like, thank you so much for this conversation and the way you're approaching the concept of joy and happiness. Kevin Williams is a colleague of mine in another context. So thank you very much. And I'm all the way to, I pinned your comments. I'm going to come back to it. Tsepo, by the way, Ntsiki's like, sure, Ntsiki's giving me Brene Brown vibes. I always think any association with Brene is always a good association. But I just want to pause on a couple of things. One of the things you've said that just resonates with me so much, not because I get it right, but because it's like, it almost hit me physically. And that is this idea of showing up happy and not putting happiness on the other side of the goal line, right? On the other side of the finish line, on the other side of the accomplishment. And I think that's oftentimes a personal mistake of mine, I know for sure, being a very goal-orientated person. It's like when I arrive at, or when I will be, instead of saying, well, I'm actually going to show up joyful and happy, and I'm going to work towards it. I'm going to give it my all. If I don't get it, that's going to be a bummer, but actually I'm going to be happy while I do it. And when I think about that, even in the context of relationships, it's just a new way of being in a relationship. You're not thinking about, I'll be happy when my partner does or when my partner is, but I'm going to be happy in this relationship with this person, come what may. Whether it's the ebbs and the flow, the ebbs and flows of, what's coming in the relationship, I'm going to be happy notwithstanding. And I love that you took us to the depot, because I mean, that's not my happy place, but but I remember just being in varsity and just going, my goodness, this is tough. Like, this is nothing like, school, but going, sure, I love what I'm studying. Like, I'm so interested in it. And I'm struggling with applying the theory of realism to South African politics. But I'm like, I want to do the hard thing. And I'm positively charged by the difficulty of what I'm doing, instead of it being something that actually, takes away my energy and takes away, my charge. The harder it gets, the more positively charged I become about how do I figure this out. So I just wanted to lift that, and I thought that was really, really amazing. It also reminded me of something that I picked up about maybe 2 years ago, and that is the idea of being a joyful warrior. And a joyful warrior for me is I don't stop fighting for the things that I think are important, and I don't stop, advocating for things that, that I want to see change in the world, but I do it with joy. And I do it in a way that attracts people and that brings other people's positive energies towards me, and so that they want to work with me towards getting that done. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. I want to quickly just lift Olwechi's comment. Olwechi is saying on Instagram, she's saying, Ntsiki, consistent self-reflection is so important to check in, especially, to check in if we're in constant flow and whether we are, I've lost it, but you're saying it's so important to check in your constant flow and making sure that even as you encounter ebbs and flow, ebbs and dips in your life, that you're in flow. And I think it's such an interesting, word you use, Ntsiki, flow, because we don't often think about flow as a way of being. And I just maybe want to double click on that a little bit. Why flow? Why that particular imagery? Why that particular word? Because we could have said stability. We could have said, anything else, but you've used a word that's associated with such dynamism. Maybe just double click on that for us a little bit.
Yeah, so flow has this idea in it around a sense of ease. It has within it the idea of adaptability, right? So if you imagine a stream flowing from its origin in a mountain all the way down the mountain into streams, into river, and ultimately into the ocean, right? The water moves as it needs to according to the terrain. And that is why I talk about that idea of flow, right? That you can go, I want to be this businesswoman doing 1, 2, 3 in this space with these people with this kind of impact. Fantastic. Except you don't control everything around you, right? So if we are structured, if we're stable, we can easily be broken when something happens in the environment, right? We don't bend as easily. We're not as malleable. But flow has this idea of going, I can move within the terrain, right? And I can figure out how to move in between those crevices, how to create space for myself and find a flow that is authentic to me, right? And flow, having that sense of ease, is that it is something that flows from internally, that this is my truth, this is me in alignment. And so when I show up in the space of alignment, I can navigate my terrain with flow, right? I can adapt as things change around me. I can adjust as things change around me. But it's also a sense of ease. So, I mean, if you think about a season in your life when you've ever tried to accomplish something and it just was not happening, right? And then you kind of go, you know what, I'm just going to leave this. And if it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, things just seem to fall into place. And that is what flow is, right? That when we are head bound on a goal, that we kind of forcefully go in that direction, bulldozing things. And sometimes life just requires a sense of, if I'm in flow, I am confident about what I'm doing. I am convinced about what I'm doing, and I trust my ability to get it done. I don't need to fight against the environment. I don't need to strive, right, which we often do. And I don't need to entertain great difficulty in the process. Yes, there'll be challenges, but when you move from a place of flow, your perception about what's happening around you changes as well. And that makes all the difference, right? So imagine that person that you maybe work with or that you engage with oftentimes, and it doesn't matter what crisis is happening at the office, they constantly have an idea, a plan, or something about how things are going to work out. Versus the person who, the moment they come across a roadblock, things are falling apart, right? And then it's that difficulty with getting things done that those different individuals experience. Because the one person is moving in flow where they're like, no, it's Oshangana. Like, as we go, we'll figure it out. And the other person is going, because of this blockage, there's no way around it, right? If we can't do this, then there's no other way in which it's possible. And it's for me, it's kind of self-imposed boundaries that don't need to be there. And when we shift into a space of flow, that's also an indicator of trust. So you are saying, I saw a meme the other day that was like, does the process know we're trusting it? And it made me laugh because I was like, yes, does the process know? But it really is that shift into, I'm going to trust this working out because I'm doing my part, right? And that shifts us from striving into ease, and that calls on the confidence and the conviction we have within ourselves to say that it's going to happen. Like, regardless, whether it happens today or tomorrow, it's going to happen. And that's not to say that you don't plan, that you don't put together strategy and execute it efficiently. It just says that your execution happens from a place of flow, which indicates ease, versus the place of striving. And what I find oftentimes when people start shifting in a place of flow is that because they're not striving towards making something happen against all odds, you see opportunities you would have previously missed. You start to see connection points you may have not previously paid attention to. And something so beautiful that you said earlier on, Nosy, about attracting people to you is that when you move from a place of flow, there's just an air around you that people go like, I like this vibe. I want to be part of that, right? And it calls people who are in that same flow, who are on that same frequency, to want to partner with you to get things done. And it can be a very difficult concept when you're a very structured person and you're used to systems and processes and it has to be this way. But I think if you look at people who've gone through that shift. And for me, when I look at a lot of successful people, financially successful, but also successful in terms of happiness and joy and fulfillment in life, it's people who've learned how to live in their flow versus, striving against all odds and whatever the environment is throwing at them.
Guys, I feel like at this point, I just must say to Ntsiki, can I be your friend? Like, can I just be your friend? Like, there's so much flow in this conversation, and I want to lift up a couple of things, and I'm going to link my last point to a question from Mkhize. But, you speak about shifting with the terrain, and I think we oftentimes, really struggle to do that because it's that change in terrain that oftentimes knocks us off our plans. And instead of now making sure that the map you're carrying adjusts to the new terrain, we go a little bit into panic mode because it's not going the way that we had anticipated and expected it to work out. Kosi is saying, how beautiful to hear you talking about getting out of survival. And I think there's so many of us who've been on survival mode for such a long time and not having to strive. And not having to struggle. Yes, as you say, there'll be challenges, but I'm not struggling and striving because that's not flow, right? And flow is not easy. It's not to say it needs to be easy. And Nafi, I saw your comment there. You were saying to me, Nafi, you're saying we need to do a session on doing hard things because I've been talking about this, for such a long time, and it's inspired by a very good friend, Fred Swanika, who says, we have to actually get up and do the hard things because that's what changes the world, right? So I'm really inspired by that. But I want to come to a DM I got from Mkhize. And Mkhize was asking, does your Ikigai and your purpose and your sense of what you're here to do in the world change through life happening? For example, through loss, losing someone significant, through grief. And that example, she said, even change, even age. Does age shift our Ikigai? So to what extent does that flow? And to what extent do we open up our Ikigai to the possibility of changing and evolving as life changes and evolves in and around us?
Man, that is so beautiful. And the quick answer is yes, right? So, and that's why it's so important to be in flow, that things can happen and then you shift. And it depends on different things, right? So I could be on a path where I am, gung-ho about being in the corner office, youngest CEO on the JSC, 500 or, Fortune 500, whatever it is. And then something happens and I realize I've been going 100% on this train that isn't meaningful to me, right? And sometimes life disturbances happen and then you kind of go, whoa, I've been doing this and yes, I'm good at it and I've been enjoying it and I'm being financially rewarded for it, but it's not what's most important to me. And that's okay, right? So you can, be on a path and then motherhood can change your perspective. You can be on a path and having a spouse can change your perspective. You can be on a path and, the loss of a dear person in your life can change your perspective. It's not to say that I think your purpose completely changes, right? And this is kind of where people can have a theological debate around, your purpose being something that you enjoy versus your purpose being something that is a higher calling that you have, based on what the Creator has said. And that's, that's for you to kind of figure out in a season, right? But the flow is to say certain things in your life might not be as important in different times, right? But also that you achieve goals at different paces. So you could go, I want to completely transform this space of my life. And then you find your flow, you get it done, and then that opens up a whole new, space of opportunities. So earlier on, when I was talking about success being a journey versus a destination, is that oftentimes we're limited to our own thinking based on what we know and what we've been exposed to. And then you get successful at something, then you get to the horizon, and all of a sudden there's a whole new world that's opened up to you, and you go, my goodness, I had no idea there's this world of possibility that's available, right? And that can happen through traveling. That can happen through meeting somebody who's from a completely different socioeconomic background to you. And then you go, wow, there's a whole new world out there that I never knew existed. And being in flow helps you to figure out how to adapt as those things change. So you could go, I'm still very much passionate about the work that I do, but I was seeing it wrong. Previously, I just thought it should be this small box, and I've just realized that there's a whole world out there. Or I still want to do the same stuff, but my process around doing it was completely wrong, and I need to rethink this, right? So definitely being open to those changes and how the world kind of at times invites you to bigger, invites you to better, and then going, okay, am I going to step into bigger? And if I'm doing that, what is it going to require of me? And I also often say to people, ask those questions again, interrogate those questions again as you go through different seasons, right? So who you may have been when you were 21 and bright-eyed thinking you could take over the world might be different when you're 30 and have more world experience. It might be different when you're 50 and have had more personal relationship experience and hurts and stuff like that. And it's okay. It doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. It just means that the direction that you're taking in life has adjusted. What I do believe to be valuable is to be very clear about what your values are as a person, that in as much as there are shifts and changes in how life ebbs and flows, that it shouldn't be fundamental adjustments. And yeah, sure, sometimes fundamental adjustments happen, right? So I could be completely convicted in the fact that women are only valuable in this context, and then have a life shift that makes me realize that women are valuable in a different context. And so in that way, your values have shifted, or how you see something has shifted. And that's okay. It's healthy if that value change is linked to. But I'm very careful to say to people that it can't be things that just, toss you as the world changes, that you have to kind of have a center of gravity and your own true north to say, even if the rest of the world is doing this, is the direction that I'm going in. And then only if it's something that is personal to you that goes, no, Z, you need to interrogate. You need to go back into, your Ikigai spiral and see if you're still on the right track. And if the world is calling you to better, then definitely answer that call and explore what that would look like.
So I just want to pick up a couple of things. So I mean, I absolutely loved your comment around, really in thinking about, we could be achieving different goals at different times and at different paces. And, I'm reminded, for me, my 20s were all about studying. That was the most important thing. It was about how many degrees, how far can I go? And that's what I'm going to focus on. And for me, that was about education being the basis. And then off that, I was really going to then try and build a career, and still am. But I'm also, the other thing that's standing out for me, Ntsiki, is the whole concept of we're always becoming. As I listen to you, it's like there's no arrival point where you go, okay, I'm here, my Ikigai is in my pocket. I know how my 4 circles sort of fit together. But it's like there's a constant evolution. And Oluchi was saying to us in the comments, saying, it's so important to give yourself the space and the time to recalibrate, and to allow for that evolution and to allow for that new alignment, because you probably need to recalibrate as things and as life happens to you. You brought up something else, which is, I don't know if we'll have time for it, but I hope in the last 10 minutes we might touch on it, and that's the question of values. I get questions about values all the time. People always ask me, but how do I know what my values are exactly? And can they change? Are they fixed? Are they, are they dynamic? Are they fundamental to my core? And how do I not make the mistake that corporates make and just choose nice words? Because who doesn't want integrity and excellence and all the sexy things that, you know, people want to talk about. So I would love to hear your comment on that. But the question I wanted to bring to you, Ntsiki, is something that was triggered by your final comment around not letting yourself be tossed around, and also like sort of being true to your true north. And what I find is that if you're not clear about what you're in pursuit of, or your own reason for existence, it's very easy to get co-opted into other people's agendas. And then you become an accessory to somebody else's life story. You become a partner to somebody else's journey. And that's when you suddenly wake up much later, you go, what am I doing here? And who am I? And suddenly the question, this existential crisis comes up again. So 2 questions. The first one is, how do I make sure that as I pursue my Ikigai, I'm doing it for me, and I'm able to silence all the demands around me to really focus on what is it that I need to do for me? And then maybe a comment on the values. How do you know that the thing that you're saying is a value is really a value, and you're not just choosing something
That's
sexy?
so good. So going back to the point of interrogation, right? So interrogating why you believe a thing, right? So values can be based on our upbringing, our environment, right? So you were raised in this particular religious context, you were raised in this community, and these were the expectations. And so you've grown to identify with those values because that is what was put on you. But you might interrogate and realize that you're incongruent with those values, right? So what I like to say to people is, what are the things you often find yourself violating, right? And if there's a conflict between you and the thing that you're violating, you then have to sit with yourself and go, okay, but is this something that I actually value, right? Because you could be violating it because it actually isn't a value for you. So you have held yourself to the standard to accomplish something that you actually don't care about, okay? So looking into that, interrogating it. And even as you shift and going, why am I doing this? That's an interrogation. So you could, as a child, get told, oh, you're so amazing, you're going to be a great doctor. And so you've held on to this idea that I'm going to be a great doctor because everybody has said this to me. And then you find yourself in med school and you're like, what the hell, right? I have nothing in me that desires to push me through this situation. And it's okay. That's like a moment because you're halfway through your qualification. But it's a necessary moment because then you have to pause in that moment and go, okay, but am I doing this because I wanted to do it? Or am I doing it because it was the expectation that other people held for me? And that's a very difficult exercise, but a very important and necessary exercise. So sitting down with yourself and going, in terms of my goals, in terms of my values, which of these things are me and which of these things are external? And as you start to write those things down, you'll start to see that emerge. So write down a piece of paper, create a column, what's from me, what's external, and then write down your values and go, okay, here's integrity. Do I care about integrity, or is it something that I think the world cares about, and therefore I think I should have integrity, but I actually don't care about it, right? And sometimes it could be ugly. So you could realize that you don't value something that the world thinks is important, but that's okay because then you're honest, right? And you can then go, in my own honesty, this is actually not a value I hold dear, or it is a value that's important to me, but it's not as important as the 3 other values that I think are higher up on my list than this particular one. You could also find, yes, I do have the same values as my family system, my friendship system, but they're not in the same order. So while this person might prioritize family, and family is very important to me, in the season where I'm pursuing career, family is actually number 5 on my list and career is number 1, and that's okay. And once you have that clarity around which of your values and your goals are self-imposed versus externally imposed, you can then also go, how do I then have those difficult conversations to say to people, hey, mom and dad, I know you guys are expecting children and family is important to me, but I don't see that happening before 35. So you can put a pause on your expectations and let's revisit this conversation, when I turn 30 or 32 or whatever it is. It's challenging, but at least you're clear about where you are, and you can help the people around you be clear as well to say that, we actually keep finding ourselves in conflict over this thing, but we're actually in conflict because we're moving from a different place in terms of when this thing is supposed to happen or how this thing is supposed to happen, because our values are incongruent with one another, and how I've set up this goal is not aligned with you, and that's okay, right? Values aren't about right or wrong. It's personal to you that this is a value for me, and I'm going to enforce this value because it's necessary for achieving my goals. It's necessary for my mental, emotional, psychological health, or my spiritual health. And it doesn't agree with what Unozi wants to do, but it's my value, and that's okay. And if Unozi really loves me as a friend or a family member, I can express my values, I can express my goals, and still remain in relationship with you without you feeling like I've completely violated something, a moral code or a friendship code that I don't remember signing or co-opting into.
So I've got a couple of, I've got less than 4 minutes left. So I just want to maybe do two things, maybe three things. The first of which is just to thank Ntsiki profusely. And if you're not following her, I think this is where you start, Ntsiki Mkhize. I mean, I found her on Instagram and I was like, why did I not know about this person? And absolutely love her content and everything that she's putting out. And I think tonight was probably just a snippet of just the depth of what she has to offer. And we want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Before we all rush off in the last 3 minutes, I also want to say, remember that I promised that I was going to take 5 people with me into an intimate podcast recording for BCG and Wits Business School with Nolita Fakute. And we've given away 2 tickets, although we had 3 correct answers. And that's because the other person turns out they're not even in the country. So we're back to 3 tickets. You have to be in Johannesburg. Please forgive me. I know that you guys are from all over the world online, but the more we get other things that we have access to that are more global in nature or specific to your country or city, we're certainly going to be bringing them your way. For now, I've got 3 tickets to give away. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and all you need to do is just put the answer before we log off, and Ndumiso is going to do the honors because I can't be the IEC in this one. Here are the questions. What do you think sets Nolita Fakute apart from other leaders? There's no one right answer. It's your interpretation. So what do you think sets her apart? Secondly, who was the last guest we had on the BCG podcast? So you actually need to go find that if you're not following the BCG podcast that we're doing. And then lastly, where is Wits Business School located exactly? If you can give us those 3 answers, we're going together 21st live together in an intimate conversation that you're going to absolutely love. So I wanted to close off on that. And then just to say to Ntsiki, one of the things that my husband always talks about, he talks about how we are the sum total, like a river, we're the sum total of all the places we've ever been. And I always think of that when we come to a place where we're talking about flow, but most importantly, owning every part of you in your story that has brought you to here. And as I'm listening to you today, it came back to me because I was realizing that I think sometimes in pursuit of our purpose, we shouldn't make the mistake of trying to craft some sort of brand of what our purpose needs to be. The purpose is the sum total of everything that I've experienced coming together to serve me in that moment, and being honest about the questions I need to ask myself so that I'm doing what I'm good at, I'm doing what I'm passionate about, I'm doing what the world needs, and I'm doing what the world is wanting to pay me for. And actually, even the not so nice parts of my story have something to give that allows me to show up for that moment of connecting with my sweet spot, my Ikigai. So from us to you, Kavazela, thank you. We appreciate you. And thank you so much for giving so much of yourself.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to be with you. And thank you so much to everybody who's joined this conversation. And I also like to extend to people an invitation that if you're wanting to know about setting goals and purpose and all of that, you can check out my page. I am doing a As I Am 21-day goal challenge. And then on Saturday, the 25th of February, we are hosting a 1-day retreat. So everything I spoke about today, we will deep dive into it, and help you leave with clarity around your goals, your Ikigai, and an action plan that you can execute. And affirmations as well, right? Not just affirmations for fun, but affirmations that are specific to your growth path and where it is that you want to go. But Dozie, thank you so much. And I love this platform. So please do continue having wonderful mentor conversations.
We love you, Ntsiki. Thank you. Thank you, Ntsiki. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Good night. Bye-bye.